I'm sure you've heard about Robert Kiyosaki. Most people have heard about Robert Kiyosaki, the guy who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And there's so much out there about him in terms of financial literacy. One of the coolest things he said, which I cannot quote directly, is that the subject of money is not taught in schools. It's not taught in formal education. It's taught in homes. And that's the reason why it is such a difficult topic. And in his case, he was fortunate he had one rich dad, one poor dad. For most of us, we probably don't have a rich dad we can learn from. So he probably picked up some of his ideas from his rich dad. For you and me, I don't think we have that luck. Today, I feel very fortunate that we have a very famous gentleman, Mr. Zack Rance, who is joining us around this virtual fireside to spread the light about how to make money in America because he was born in America. He knows how the system works. For some of the people that I know, they were not born in America. And even if you were born in America, unless the subject of money was taught in your home, it is an elusive one. So, welcome aboard, Mr. Zack Rance. I know you represent a lot of hope for a lot of people. And give us a sense of where you're joining from this morning.
No, definitely. Well, hey, it's great to be here, and I appreciate you inviting me, Dr. Gideon. And I know it's been a long time coming, so I appreciate the fact that you kept pursuing and we made it happen. So I appreciate you.
I
And
could not I could not lose sight of having you, and I'm very grateful for anybody who knows you. And for those who don't know, you have been making millionaires in our community. You have been referred to as a grandfather of a new generation of people who have a strong desire to be successful, but they had a hunger, but they were looking for the right path, and you've helped to show them how to be successful. First things first. Uh, you are the leader of True North. Talk to us first about True North before we get to all the other more complicated and more great shiny objects and all that good stuff.
definitely, I think the company and the name in itself, True North is always it's just a direction. I think my main thing is starting in doing this and continuing to do this is I feel people need guidance, and it's
Mhm.
important. And a big part of that guidance is also just how to treat people, and because everyone's at a different place in their journey.
Mhm.
Some people come and they bring to the table some more abilities than others, but I think at the end of the day, everyone tries their best.
Mhm.
And I was mentioning this to a group earlier on today, and I want people to feel how I see them in the future, not how they see themselves right now. And I think
Wow.
if we can have people leave with that sort of feeling in any kind of interaction we have with them, it's a
Wow.
powerful process. Can you imagine what it would look like if more people in this
Mm.
world kind of just behaved and operated from that perspective?
Mm.
I think, so there's a lot of work, beyond just the financial stuff that we do.
Mm.
And like going back to your original question, you asked me as far as like growing up and the rich dad, having a rich dad, and there's a difference between a mentor and a coach. I played sports growing up my whole life, and a coach, in sports they'll draw up the play, right? This is X and O, right? The X's and
Mhm.
O's of the play, but a mentor changes the way of how you view the play, your perception,
Mm.
your
Mm.
they shift you mentally, right? And a
Yes.
lot of champions, you have a lot of people out there who are good athletes who might be able to run the play really well,
Mhm.
but they don't think like a champion. So you wonder why they don't
Mm.
have too many championship rings.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's an interesting concept, especially when you apply that to business, right?
That's very deep. The idea of helping them to see themselves as they would be tomorrow and not only focus on the today. And the idea of mentoring them to know that tomorrow can be better than it is today. No need to be preoccupied with today. So I think that's really a good precursor to what we'll be talking about today. Because for anybody joining, this is the Story Warrior channel, a channel that focuses on telling the stories of unsung heroes with untold stories, especially those who are writing or creating or crafting a new narrative. And so the theme of our conversation this morning is financial literacy is a fundamental human right. Oh, yes. It's a fundamental human right. And I don't know anybody who is better at this than you, because as I mentioned earlier, you have grandfathered, you have mentored many people, you have brought people into existence, into a movement that celebrates the fact that every single family that wants to work hard can make as much as they want. And you always remind them to be respectful and to do it ethically. Talk to us about the importance of making breakthroughs, making successes financially, but at the same time, remaining committed to being ethical and being respectful and being morally grounded. Talk to us about that and why that's so important for True North.
Right. No, that's a great question. And I think, I was told from some of my early mentors, like the fastest way to get something done is do it right the first time,
Mm,
right?
mm,
Just do it right. And, at the end of the day, I always, when you think about it, what you achieve in your life, your physical life, we kind of, we attach ourselves to accolades. We attach ourselves to titles.
mm.
We have as human beings, we have an addiction to attachment, things that don't really, at the end of the day, necessarily mean anything, right?
Yes,
Because
that's true.
things mean only what we give meaning to, right? So a
Mm,
lot of times we give meaning to the wrong things and we get attached to that meaning.
mm,
So when it comes to material things, the homes, the cars, everything, like, money, even to that extent, I understand like it's necessary, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, we get so attached to it that we
mm,
almost we lose ourselves,
mm.
do anything to achieve it. When at the
Yes.
end of the day, we almost forget about the journey and the people that we're impacting and what we're doing this for.
Mm,
There's I want to say it's Native American, but the philosophy is seventh generation, where the
mm,
stuff you do today, you're
mhm.
thinking about the generations, 7 generations from today. That's who you're doing,
Wow.
right? So it's
Wow.
a different way. If you look at how we operate,
Mhm,
and you ask yourself the question is, what impact does this have on the end game? And the end game would
mm.
be 7 generations from today, not the end game of today, right?
Wow. That is deep. That's way deeper than I thought. I maybe I'm thinking 1 or 2 generations, but you're talking about 7 generations. That's a lot of time. And there's abundant evidence that if you really look back to the communities that do very well, the countries that do well, their founding fathers did not just think about 1 generation. They
Right,
thought 3, 4, 5, 6 generations ahead. And we're all benefiting from that because America makes a big deal about it. The founding fathers. It's not a flux.
right.
It's truly these guys were gifted. They had a wholesome mind. They had a vision for a country that
That's
could be different from where they were coming from.
right,
And yes, they were human. They made their own mistakes, but clearly they had some ideals. They had some ideals that powered them through, and those ideals continue to help everybody to find a voice till today. So, what are some of the ideals that you would say True North is committed to promoting, as much as you're committed to promoting financial literacy within our community? And by community, I mean people who are in the middle class, who are hardworking, whether they are immigrants or non-immigrants, anybody who is willing to put a good number of hours to make their family successful 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 generations down the line. What are some of the ideals that True North
yeah.
embraces?
I would say, some of the attributes actually would be like, I would say discipline and consistency. The separator from, you look at any industry, not just our industry in the financial sector, but any
Mhm.
industry, you look at the people that got those companies kicked off and the success that they've had,
Yes.
is understanding the cycle where it's like, it's not going to happen overnight. But if you
Mm.
stay disciplined to the
Yes, sir.
habits,
Yes, sir.
and I'll elaborate on what the habits in a second, but you stay
Yes, sir.
disciplined, committed, and consistent showing up,
Mhm.
because most people
Mhm.
quit when it gets
Mm.
out of their comfort zone. But you
Mhm.
know, the question I always ask people, and I love the name Story Warrior, right?
Yes, sir.
Uh,
Thank you.
because most people in life, they tell themselves a story, and
Yes.
usually the story is counterproductive to the goals that they're trying to achieve.
Mm. Mm.
'Cause what happens when you tell yourself a story, you eventually start believing that story, whether it be true or not, you believe it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. At this
And that,
point, I want to sound my boo like, That is a big one right there. Not because you mentioned the word story warrior, but because I think the stories that we tell ourselves, they tend to, we start to fulfill them, we start to work towards them. If we tell ourselves I'm a coward, even if you're a lion, oh my God, you see everybody, you start to shake, you start to fear. Even if it's a lion, if the lion doesn't believe it's a lion, if it's a cowardice, a coward, it would run away from every object it sees. But if a lion or a sheep sees itself as powerful, as strong, and it projects that out, it's gonna scare off everybody. So that's why I'm sorry I had to interrupt. I had to
No,
pull in the Vuvuzela moment to blast it off in
I like
appreciation for.
well, it's important because I think part of what I do and why I still do it is because I realize how many people in life and the people I interact with, their stories are messed up, right? And this crazy part is the stories that they believed in has led them to a series of habits to where now it affects their identity of who they think they are. So most people, we live in a world where people walk around not even really understanding who they are, but they're living a life based off the stories that usually they didn't even make up themselves. They were told these stories by other people,
And they
right?
believe them.
And they believed it, how they should act, what they should become, what life is supposed to be.
Yes.
And once we realize, Dr. Gideon, the interesting part is once we realize that it's just a story, and we kind of
Yes.
go through that process of really breaking it down to understanding why am I built the way I am.
Yes.
Um, and we start to realize like, oh well, wow, you could recreate your story.
Yes,
You
sir.
you don't have to
Absolutely.
live by the story you were told. You could just recreate it.
You can recreate it because it's a human thing.
It's a human thing, right?
Wow.
And a lot of it goes down to habits. So the question is like, all right, do you have the habits of someone that has the life that you want?
Oh.
That's the real main question. Most people, so then, everything that I mentioned before, the discipline, right,
Mhm.
consistency, most people are where they are because they have the habits of someone that has what they
Mm.
have.
I
And,
see.
and those that usually lack, usually
Mhm.
they have the habits of someone that lacks. And
Mm.
that's why they are where they are. But if we never take a step back and take a 15, like, whatever, 20,000 foot view of the whole
Mhm.
situation, we never really realize, like, man, you know what? If we go back in time,
Mm.
I've been believing a story that, and if you look back, if you were to take like a time machine and go back and record that moment that the story was based on,
Yeah.
usually what they think now and what they tell themselves now in like modern and like present day was
Wow.
wasn't even true. Like what really happened wasn't even what they believed to be true, but they've been sharing their life, like their whole life, 20, 40, 30, 50, 60 years of their life based
Yes.
off a story that was incorrect.
Yes.
The
Oh my
crazy.
goodness. That strikes a chord with me because there's a famous American speaker by name Les Brown. He says, someone's impression of you does not have to become your reality.
Right.
So this is what I'm hearing you say. In other words, like if you go back and look at that moment when somebody maybe said something that you're no good, or you're not the fastest runner in the world, you don't look good, doesn't mean that you can go spend some time and train yourself and develop the muscle, the capacity to outdo that impression of them. So
Absolutely.
in the financial world, uh, is it possible for someone who comes from very little to work hard and really be successful in America today, financially speaking?
Oh, absolutely. I absolutely think so. And I think there's very few opportunities. All right, here's an analogy. I think everyone has what it takes to be successful, to be extremely successful.
Okay.
And here, especially in the United States, is one of those unique opportunities where you really could go out there. And there's obviously a lot of issues that we could throw into the pot, a lot of forces against certain aspects of what we try to achieve. But
Mhm.
the reality is, I think when it comes to someone really, coming here, becoming successful, and reaching certain milestones and accolades, the what it comes down to is like, are they just willing to do the work, right? I mean, it's kind of like, all right, well, if I want to be successful, I need to make sure that I take full 100% responsibility of the outcome.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
no matter what the deal is, I have to take responsibility. So
Yes, sir.
to come here and get wealthy, I'll use this analogy. Most people in life want to do well. We all want the same things as human beings, right? I want my family to do well. I want my kids to do well. I want to
Mhm.
be happy. I want to be healthy, right? We all kind of those human needs. I
Mhm.
think Tony Robbins talks about it a lot, right?
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, though, when it comes down to all of us wanting to happy, successful, live a fulfilled life, the reality of the matter is going to come down to, all right, one, we talked about habits. Secondly, we were talking about how I show up, and how do you show up, and the how you show up to one thing and how you do one thing is how you do everything. So we kind of take that concept and we break it down and say, all right, well, am I showing up the way that I want to show up to get the outcome that I want? And you look at it, and most people just don't show up correctly. So the analogy I'll use is this: everyone wants the same thing. We all want to be happy, successful, and a lot of people have what it takes to do that.
Yes.
But here's the thing: we talk about platform. This is why I love our platform so much and why it's so powerful.
Yeah.
If I use this analogy, I say, all right, Dr. Gideon, have you watched, we all watch movies, and, if you watch movies, you have A-rated movies and you have B-rated movies sometimes, right? You go to networks and they have kind of like the movies, daytime, like, you usually wouldn't watch it. But every so often in the B-rated movie, you'll have a great actor. And you imagine, like, you'll see that actor, right? And you're like, man, and you're asking yourself, how come this person, they're such a great actor, why are they in this bad movie? And it doesn't necessarily say that that's a bad actor, but the reason, and you ask yourself, okay, why hasn't this actor had their blockbuster hit yet?
Yes.
So we take that example and we kind of use it in life. And I'll say like this, Dr. Gideon, like, most people are A-list actors in life. They have what it takes to be an A-list actor.
Yes.
But the problem is they just been performing on the wrong stage. They've been only performing in B movies, which is why they never had the blockbuster hit. So when you think about our platform, we just take people and we put them on the right stage because they already have what it took to be an A-list actor.
Wow.
We just help enhance that and put them on the right stage so they can fully perform and have their blockbuster hit. You see
that is interesting. So the platform is critical to how far a player or an actor will be able to perform. And you have a platform that you've been active on. It's a leading financial services company. You've been active in it. You have elevated many guys from far and near to find extreme financial success. What would you say are some of the secret, I don't know if it's a secret or it's an open book, that you see in those that really go out there and they get the message from you and they get out there and do it? And those that come in and they just struggle by and they don't seem to go too far. What would you say? Because you've observed a lot of this. What do you say are some of the secrets of those that are really crushing it?
Yeah, and let me say this too. I'm very blessed to be working alongside just some amazing individuals who, we come into a platform like what we offer. And I don't know. I've always, like, when you look at business, you have, a horizontal org chart versus a vertical org chart. And most businesses operate off a vertical org chart.
Yep.
And personally, I never gravitated towards that. And the reason being is because there's a lot of ego involved with that kind of situation, right? And whenever there's ego present, then the ego eventually kicks over, and what happens is things kind of start breaking apart internally, right?
That's right.
So, if I always operate from a perspective of, everyone that I bring and I work alongside with is equal, because I can learn just as much from someone brand new than I could from someone that has 30 years of experience.
Yeah.
So, within that, it's the separator and the people that actually come here and do extremely well, and the ones that are kind of just here trying to figure it out. You have a couple of things going on. One, you have analysis paralysis. That's the one thing, right? So a lot of people want to know the content, so they're focused on the wrong thing, right? We go to school and we want to learn content, and you have a lot of people that could go to school and get A's, but at the end of the day, you put them in the real world and they can't figure it out. Right. Yep. And so you have content versus context. So we take the approach of, I'm not just going to teach you content. That's just, all right, well, here's a slide deck or here's the concept. But the context is your understanding of why it is the way it is, right? Your fundamental understanding, the underneath. Right?
Yes.
So if I get focused on teaching you context rather than content, then we could get you a lot further, because now you understand the why.
Okay.
So if you understand why, then you ask how. So here's the main separator, though, Dr. Gideon. The main separator is going to be this. The difference is going to be those that do well and those that don't do well is action.
Oh.
So most people that don't do well just don't take action. They want to learn everything before they do anything. But the reality is, those that do well, it never has to be perfect. They understand that the most priceless thing that they could get here is the experience underneath their belt,
and the action.
and that's only through action. And and experience is something that they have to earn. That's why I was told by my mentor. He's like, Zach, the only way to get good at this business is through personal experience, and that's something you got to earn. We can't teach you.
Okay. So it's like sports, and I know you used to play sports. You got to sweat.
You have to.
You got to break the sweat. You got to. Sometimes it's not comfortable, but you have to do it, and maybe have a couple of sprains. Have a day that you're like literally crawling, but you have to break some sweat in order to be able to make it. So can you take us back before you joined financial services industry? Where were you? What were you doing?
Yeah. So interesting. I went to school for information systems. So I went to school to get an IT degree. And the reason why I went to school for that was mainly because I wanted to get a degree in something where at that time was paying the most money when I got done. So
And you're in Silicon Valley, right? So you sure know what was going on. You know what could make money. So all right.
Yeah, I went to
If you're in
college.
Silicon Valley, you know what makes money. Okay.
Right. During the uptick of the .com stuff, I was in it, that, because that's what was happening.
Yes.
And it was an interesting process because I get done with my undergrad and I try to get a job. And there's no jobs out there. And at that time, the reason why there was no jobs in my industry was because that's when the .com bubble burst.
Okay.
So they can hire someone that has experience for the same price as they can hire me with no experience, right?
Yes.
So the .com bubble burst. Talked to my advisor at the time, my academic advisor, and they were like, "Well, Zach, there's nothing out there. Go back and go to school, get your master's degree." So I was like, "All right, kind of makes sense, right? You gotta be careful who you take advice from, right?" So, so I went back to school, got my master's degree, and thinking that I'll let things calm down. In my mind, I was like, "I'll let things calm down a little bit, and then maybe there'll be some jobs." So 2 years later, I get my master's degree and go back out there. There's nothing in my space. So I ended up switching over to healthcare, and I was in healthcare staffing, which is, essentially healthcare recruiting. I was staffing a lot of hospitals with nurses and medical assistants, CNAs, director, admin, everything, right?
Yeah.
So, I did that for about 7 years. And what that process taught me, though, because it allowed me to interact and communicate with a lot of people. Because that's what I had to do on a daily basis. I had to place them in different hospitals. And it also allowed me to understand distribution. And that's really when you look at the industry and space I'm in, it really comes down to just communication, human beings, people skills, distribution. So I was able to kind of look at that whole experience I had, and I think that what it teaches you is it didn't teach me what I wanted. More importantly, I think the more the value came from me really understanding what I don't want. And I think, Dr. Gideon, we ask people who are in their 30s or 40s, or maybe even if they're lucky, they're in their 20s and they understand this. Life isn't about knowing what you want. It's about getting what you want. But more importantly, you save time by knowing what you don't want.
Yep.
And the only way to know what you don't want is by having experience with it. Right.
And avoiding what you don't want. You walk away from it so you can focus on what you want.
Right. So I was very clear when I started. Like, I knew exactly what I didn't want, which was to have a boss, to be locked down from 9 to 5, to not have time to create memories and experiences with my family. And I think
Yes, sir.
At the end of the day, after the material stuff, that's probably, for me at least, the most important thing is, I say at the end of the day, my number one thing, I can't take any of the materialistic items with me. All I could take is the memories that I was able to create during my lifetime.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
So,
is that how you were raised, or is it just something that you wanted to create in your own life?
Yeah.
Give us a little sense of that. Is that how?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the fact, because you mentioned it in the beginning, I don't think I actually answered it, but like, I didn't grow up with money.
I see. So and today you're a very, very, very wealthy person. So tell us, how did you make that evolution?
Yeah, not growing up with money, again, I realized I know what I didn't want, and I didn't want to have to raise my kids with no money. Right? I was willing to do whatever it took.
That's between a rock and a hard place. You don't want to be there.
Right. And because I knew how it felt not to have money. I knew how it felt, not to, my mom made my clothes, wore hand-me-down shoes 2 times over. It came from my older cousin to my older brother, then finally to
Wait,
me.
I thought that only happened to us in Africa. You mean this also happened in America? Are you kidding me?
Right, you would think, right? And
That's
it's
I
crazy,
can't
right?
believe that. I can't believe that because I got a lot of hand-me-downs. My first hand-me-down was at the age of 10. I
Yeah.
wore them. I persevered with them all day long. I got a lot of blisters.
Oh yeah.
But I still like, okay, this is all I've got. I have. So
Yeah.
you tell me you did not grow up so much with so much money and you also wore hand-me-downs and
Oh yeah.
yet you had this vision.
Yeah. You
Maybe
get
walk us through that.
yeah. So you think about the not growing up that way, you realize what you don't want, what you don't like. And but at the same time, Dr. Gideon, the interesting part was like I didn't ever have I feel like I was lacking anything because
Mm,
of what my parents focused on is like, all right, well, what is priceless is you being a impactful individual to
yes.
society, right? You doing what you need to do to help out others and what you give
Yes.
back. So,
Yes.
we never felt like we lacked anything, even though,
Yes.
we just didn't realize, what
Yeah.
we didn't have. And as you get older though, you start experiencing like, okay, well, man, and there's other people out there that live different lives. And for me, it was interesting. It was at a young age. I was about 5 years old in kindergarten.
Mhm.
And my son's right here. Sorry about
It's okay.
that.
It's all right. It makes it real.
Yeah,
We don't want this to be scripted. We want it to be a real human experience, So
right.
he can walk around. That's fine.
So the interesting part to give you the story behind that, like that evolution for me, like there's always a pivotal moment I think in everyone's life where if you don't really, you might not notice that at the time, but then you reflect back and you start realizing like, wow, you know what, that was a pivotal moment in my life. So for me, when I was about his age, I was about 5 or 6 years old, and my best friend at that time, his name was Chris, right? And
Mhm.
Chris lived in San Francisco where I grew up.
Mhm.
There's a area in the city where they have these huge mansions. Right? We're
Hmm.
talking about 10, 15, 16 bedroom, 20
Mhm.
bathroom, like estates, like mansions, right?
Wow.
And at 5 or 6 years old, you really don't care. You're just looking for you're looking for a friend that you can play hide and seek with. You don't notice those things.
Exactly.
And all I remember back then was it was way more fun to go to Chris's house and play hide and seek than my little apartment. Right?
Okay.
So I remember from 5 years old and, just going to his house and we used to get lost in there and it was just fun. And then, as you get older though, you start to realize man, you start seeing the discrepancy between where I live and where
Yeah.
he lives. So going back to like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that kind of thing. And,
Yeah.
and this is not a knock on my parents because they did the best with what they had. Right.
Yes.
My
And
mom,
I really appreciate that because if you're giving your best, that's what's important. Because like in my case, mom could not read or write her name, but she did everything from the heart.
right,
She put the best she could on the table. So
right.
yeah, so that really is a powerful formative experience.
Yeah, no, it is. And, so understanding that, so I was grateful for what I had, but I understood now the seed was planted that there's more out there. And
Mm,
as I didn't notice it really till I started getting older and you start recognizing things, right? You start recognizing
yes.
like, man, your house is just way nicer. Like you're
Yeah.
gonna do a lot more different things with your
Yeah.
family,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, once I started realizing that, then I was like, it just planted the seed. I didn't know how I was gonna get there, but I realized there's people
Mm,
that actually live these lives and
mm.
they're normal people just like you and me. They still
Yeah.
breathe, you have to,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that being planted in my mind, I knew it's not like, man, you know what? It's possible. It's
Mm.
possible. That's all I needed to know. That it's possible. There's a shot.
Okay. Yeah.
So that was pivotal for me when I look back and realized, like, hey, you know what? This is what happened.
And you
Yeah.
kept your mind open to new possibilities.
Right.
And sooner than later, you started to dabble into financial services. Can you talk about that transition from healthcare into wealth care, as some people like to call it?
Right.
And then from there, we could talk a little bit further about that. First, that transition. When did you make the transition and why?
So, all right. So I'm about 7 years into my career in healthcare sales and healthcare staffing, right? And
Mhm.
I remember one day, and by the way, I respect the people in that industry and that space is definitely
Oh,
needed.
yes,
And
absolutely.
every level, every position, no matter what it is. But I was working 50, 60 hours a week. And
Mm.
I thought I was getting paid pretty well, but when you start looking at the numbers and you start seeing, all right, well, this is how much I've made the company versus how much they pay me. I'm like, wow, this is not making sense. It's not adding up. So And then I remember one day, I remember I was in the office and I remember looking at the boss, right? And, he owned the company. And I looked at him and he's probably like 15, 20 years older than me. And he looked miserable. He
Oh,
just looked like beat up, tired. He looked like, I think he was probably going through a divorce or something. And he was trying to sell me the dream on like, hey, eventually you stay here long enough, Zach, this is going to be yours. I was like,
yeah.
I
Oh,
looked at him
see,
and I just saw my future and I was like, nope, no thanks.
don't want
I
that.
don't want it.
Don't
You
want
can have
that. Keep it.
you
Keep
can
it for
keep that,
yourself.
right? Because it's not like he was even. I mean, he had to because I was one of his best employees. He had to pay me. I think I was probably getting paid more than he was taking home as the owner of
Okay.
the company. And
Wow.
I was like, nah. If I have to do this for 20 years to get where he is, then I was like, I have to
That's.
find something else.
I see.
And I knew I didn't want to do the corporate world. I knew that I had more in me
Mm,
than just working for someone else and building their dreams.
yes.
So how I got introduced to the platform is one, I was dissatisfied with where I was at. I knew I had more
Okay.
in me. So I was open. And I
Okay.
think a lot of times people are, I always say the biggest bully that you could have in your life would be the person that when you stand in the mirror is looking right back at you.
Mm,
Because
mm,
that person dictates how you operate.
yes.
And if you could understand how to look at yourself and control what you're saying, your affirmations, and you could control it, like I like to say, like I'm the guy that bullies the bullies, right? So because the biggest bully is going to be you in the
Yep.
mirror.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yep.
if you really understand that, then you could tell yourself, like, look, if you could face yourself, then you could accomplish anything. Because
Mm.
usually we're the ones talking ourselves out of things rather than talking ourselves into them.
Hmm.
So I realized, like, when I looked in the mirror, I knew, like, I I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew I wanted to change, and I couldn't talk myself out of it because I knew what I didn't want. I didn't want to have
Mm,
to live that life, and I needed to be free. I wanted to
mm,
have freedom of time. I needed to find something where I didn't get capped on my income,
mhm.
and also on the other side of it, I wanted to find something that I could also help others, and that could do the same thing and follow
Mm,
this example.
Voilà.
So, that being said, like you mentioned, like we've been very blessed to be able to have some very successful people that we've been able to work alongside.
Mhm.
And I don't take a fraction of the credit for that, besides the fact that, maybe, I took some bumps on the head before and try to make it
Like,
easier and easier as we go forward. But
I think maybe that comes with territory, right? Like the grandparents, the people that grew up in the depression, they took more bumps than we're taking now. So those that came after that, the World War I, World War II, and all of that, so they took more bumps. So you definitely took a lot of bumps for some of the success that people like myself and others are enjoying today. But if you had to advise someone who is interested in financial services uh, today, and maybe they've been successful in another career and they're still struggling with the decision of moving over, what would be your advice to them?
yeah, that's a great question. My advice to them would be just to sit down and be honest with themselves and ask themselves, like, like, what do they really want?
Mm,
Like, what do they really want? Most people never sit down for 2 minutes and ask themselves, like, what do they?
mhm,
If you had just a blank canvas to create and draw out any kind of life that you want to draw out,
mhm,
what would that look like without?
mm,
And this is the key, Dr. Gideon, without
mhm.
the reservations and restrictions of the stories that we tell ourselves. So if I were
Oh,
to say recreate your story, and what's the fairy tale life that you want to live?
voila.
And if
So,
they're honest about it, they've almost learned to accept, right? They learn to accept their current situation, thinking that, all right, well, if I'm just doing a little bit better than the previous year or than
yep,
my neighbor, then I'm
yeah.
okay. So,
Oh,
but is that really what they were after? If they really were, like, to get down and be honest, like, no, they really
mm,
wanted this, but
mm,
since they're doing better than so and so, they get
mm,
comfortable, right?
yeah.
And by the way, that number, Dr. Gaten, is different for everyone. Some people,
Okay.
they want to be billionaires, and that's fine. Some people, a couple 100,000 years, like, that's what they want,
They want,
and that's okay,
and
right?
if that comes from their heart and they're honest with themselves, then
That's okay.
let them pursue that. That's what I hear you say.
But what I know is
Okay.
this. But I know, like, to your point, is what I know is most people want freedom of time
Mm,
to create memories, and they
mhm,
really have to ask themselves, like, if we don't put a monetary value on it, like, if it's 250,000, 500,000, a couple million a year,
Mm-hmm.
a couple million a month,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it might be, what I realize is you have to ask yourself, you might be happy with the income you're making at your job, but are you free? Are
And
you going to be? Yeah, that's the
that's
question.
very deep. Are you free, and are you creating the memories that you'll be proud of
Exactly.
one generation from today or two
Yeah.
generations from today? So I took good note
Memories.
of that.
Because
I,
think
I
about,
was
or I mean, cut you off, but think about this. What I remembered in the story I told you about, the pivotal moment in my life, it was a memory that was created that changed my story, which changed my habits, which changed my
mm,
belief system.
yes,
Now it helped shape my current identity to where
yes,
I am today. So
wow,
everybody has that moment if they think back and
yes,
they take it for what they need to take it for. Because remember,
yes,
like, perception is key in this whole thing, right?
absolutely,
Like,
absolutely,
if your perception is, oh, at that time I can't do it, blah blah blah, or man, it's only for them, or whatever the case might be, then that's
yes,
going to lead to your habits and your identity. But if your perception is like, man, I know it's possible,
yes.
then it's gonna affect your day to day
Pro-
habits. Right?
it's going to
Exactly.
propel you in a different direction.
It
I
does.
would absolutely still love to continue this conversation, but I know for the fact that you have to go, and I also have to jump on another meeting. But so I just want us to maybe close with a couple very short question, short answer type, which wraps up our conversation about finding financial literacy, which is certainly, to me, it's a fundamental human right, because if you don't have that freedom, you
Yeah.
can't really say you're a human. You're like a caged animal. You're a caged bird. Let's not even go there. So, Mr. Rance, if I had to come to you and say, who is one financial guru that you respect, who would you say that is?
A financial guru I respect. Narrow it down, and to narrow it down to one. That's
It could be
interesting.
it could be a lot, but maybe just throw us one or two, three names.
I think I'll if I were not to give it a name, but as far as just the ideology of what I respect, I think I'll take that route. Okay, so what I respect is when people are really in tune with what they're making the money for, the finance, like why they're
Why are
doing
they
what,
making the money?
why
Okay,
they're making the money. Like, what are you gonna
fantastic,
do with it? So if
fantastic.
those that kind of engage in, like, at some point, especially for me, it's like when you realize it's not about the money
Yes,
and it now becomes a passion for them.
yeah, yeah.
Those That ideology is kind of like the people. Those are the people that I like to follow and I respect.
Oh, I see.
Right. So, because if it's just about profit and making
Just about the
money,
money.
then I'm going to treat you differently than I
Hmm.
would if it's really just my passion, is because I care about your family more than you think I do. Right.
I see.
So it's a whole different experience. So, like, if I were to say now, like, let's narrow it down and say, all right, who are some people that fit that mold?
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I don't want to start naming names because, I mean, obviously
Okay.
there's quite a few,
Okay.
but
Okay. Okay.
if someone has that idealism as far as that's how they operate, then
Uh-huh.
that's who I respect. So, financial guru wise, because all of them have different aspects, and I don't think I respect some, like, I respect Elon Musk for his innovation and what he does,
Yeah.
and I respect Bill Gates' ex-wife for her philanthropy, for example, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah. Fair
respect
enough.
Robert Kiyosaki for his insight when it comes to just business and systems and so forth. So there's different aspects of it, but the
Okay.
real question is, are they doing this out of passion because they want to, like, they want to help human beings?
Or just they're doing it just sheer for the sheer desire to make a lot of money.
Right. Because what
Okay.
gets me excited, Dr. Gideon, last thing I'll say is this. What gets me excited is, like, the experiences that I have and what I'm able to do here, which is important for me, is
Yes.
like what I'm able to do with my family and the experiences that I'm able to create.
Mm.
It excites me to be able to have someone else and I can help them have
Mm.
and create those same experiences for their family.
For them, for
That's what
themselves. Wow.
you
Wow.
know,
In fact,
priceless.
that leads me to the next question, which I think I know the answer. So, what's the best thing money can buy?
Ah, um, I think once you get past all this, I mean, there's not, and don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong if your thing is cars, if you like nice homes, nice
uh,
purses, like suits, do what you want.
yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that, but it gives you options. I
Mm.
think that's the best thing. It gives you options, not only on the material stuff,
Yeah.
it gives you options to have freedom, right?
Okay.
So think about it. If you have a job because you're not self-employed, then you're at the mercy of what your boss tells you to do. If
Yeah.
you have if you have resources to hire someone to help you around the house to cook for you, think about how much time we spend cooking. Like you have to
Mm.
go to the grocery, you have to think through the meal, go to the grocery store, get the food, prep it, cook it, clean up, and that's day to day, right? But
Yeah.
what if you and if it's your passion to cook, then go ahead, that's cool. But
Yeah.
if you ask most people, I don't like me personally. I don't like that process. I like
Okay.
eating. That's what I
Like
like to
good
eat.
food.
I
Yeah.
like to eat, but I don't like
Yeah.
the prep part.
You have
So
to be around the fire, but you face
right,
different kind of fires for sure.
yeah, exactly. So, but
Okay.
think about it. So, if I had the resources to pay for someone to take that off my plate, so
Yeah.
now I can spend an extra hour, 2, 3 hours with my kids.
I see.
You see, so it gives
Yeah.
you options, and
Options. Okay. So the
that's the
best thing money can buy is options. What's the worst thing money can buy? Give us one or two words.
most. Entitlement, and
Oh. Hmm.
yeah, I
That is
think
very interesting. I could not see that coming. Entitlement. I need to write that down. The worst thing money can buy is entitlement. To feel like, oh my God, this should be mine. And the very last one is you walk into uh, a, an awards event
yeah.
and they want to give you an award. They have three envelopes. One of them is in pound sterlings. One of them is in dollars. One of them is in euros. Which of the envelopes would you take for this award? Pound sterlings, euros, or dollars?
If they were to hand me 3 envelopes, what's the award for?
For some hard work that you've done, like you've built so many multi-millionaires, and they want to award, they want to give you this award and this recognition. They say, but Mr. Rance, would you want to take this money in pound sterlings? Or would you want to take it in euros? Do you want to take it in dollars or in yens or
All right,
renminbi?
I got you. So, I mean, I can answer that. I mean, just the practical answer would be obviously I'm in the United States, so I'll take it in dollars. But
Okay.
the impractical answer and the answer that I think for me, like I'm gonna look at it and say, all right, well, there's obviously a lot more research I would have to do in that, but like
Okay.
so I guess the more insightful answer that on the other side for the intellectuals, I guess would be like, to be honest with you, is like where can I make the most impact for my money? Like where can I put that
Oh,
money and make the most impact if it's whether it's euros or if it's dollars.
oh,
So like
all
again,
right.
thinking like future generations, like right
Yes.
now, if I'm gonna use the money, yeah, I live in the United States, I'm gonna use the dollars. But if I
Okay.
look and really kind of understand what's happening, like, all right, well, if I were to say this foreign market here in Europe is
Yeah.
going to be coming up, or
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
China, then hey,
Yeah.
cool. Then
You invest in renminbi and three,
yeah,
four generations down the line, it might be tenfold, 15-fold what it could have yielded in United States dollars. Okay, now that's a fair answer. I'm not. It wasn't a
yeah,
catch you answer. I was just to see.
yeah,
Okay, but I love the fact that you put some insight into it, and so I'm very grateful for you making this time. And I just want to thank you so much because it's hard to find this amount of time from someone as busy as you are with a large team, with a big team that you're coaching, you're mentoring, you're guiding, you're nurturing them, cultivating them to become successful, not only for themselves, but for their own families. Is there any last word you want to have for people who want to grow businesses and generate freedom?
yeah. I mean, well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm glad we finally got to do this, and you're doing some impactful and very important work here.
Thank you, sir.
And I think the last thing I'll say to people is just you have to I mean, I learned this from one of my mentors, and it's always you are where your attention is. And a lot of times, if you really think about that, you dissect it, a lot of like you have to, now that you're aware of where your attention is, if you really understand that, you're constantly being aware of where you're putting your attention. And a lot of times we put our attention on the wrong things.
Mm,
Right. And I want you to even for the people listening to this, think about how like whatever situation happened, maybe even if it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago,
mm,
how much energy and time have you spent just thinking about something that already happened such a long time ago that you can no longer even control?
mm.
So you are where your attention is, meaning that if life happens so fast, I mean, you have kids, I have kids, and the funny part is, I have a 20-year-old, and I remember when he was 6, like boom, like yesterday.
Mm.
And because I was in the process of developing myself at that time, I was there physically, but I wasn't as present probably as I should have been. And
Mm,
I can't, Dr. Gideon, what kills me the most is I can't get that time back.
yes, attention is a key,
See,
and they say attention is it's an economy of its own.
it is.
And I'm hoping that we can continue this conversation some other time, maybe later this year or next year.
That'd be
And we'll
awesome.
probably start by talking about how attention can be monetized
Yeah,
and why sometimes we leave money on the table, we miss things because we did not put the right attention where it was
exactly.
supposed to be. Thank you
Exactly.
so much, Mr. Rance.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate you and all the followers of True North,
Yeah.
and I hope that we will run into each other somewhere. But I would still always benefit from your advice. Thank you so much for this day.
Thank you, Dr. Gideon. God bless. Appreciate you. You have a good
Bless
one.
you. Bless you, myself.
All right. Take care.
Okay, talk to you later.